Welcome to this exciting video tutorial where we're going to build a music creation game in Java. Whether you're a beginner or have some Java experience, this tutorial will guide you through each step of the process. Let's get started. First, let's set up our project. Open your IDE and create a new Java project named Music Creation Game. This will be the foundation of our application. Next, we will create the main class for our application. Right-click on the SRC folder, select New, and then Class. Name the class Music Game. This class will contain our main method. Now, let's implement a simple game loop. This loop will handle user input and manage game updates. Create a method called GameLoop inside the Music Game class. In this loop, we prompt the user for input. If the user inputs Q, the game will exit. Otherwise, we'll call a method to play music based on the user's input. Let's implement the playMusic method next. Returning to our main method, we need to create an instance of the Music Game class and start the game loop. Add these lines to the main method. Let's run our application to see what's happening. In the console, you should see Welcome to the Music Creation Game and the prompt to enter a note. Try entering some notes, followed by Q to exit. Now that we have a basic structure, let's add some features. We want to play actual sounds corresponding to the notes input by the user. For this, we'll use the Java Sound API. Start by importing the necessary libraries. Next, we need to update our playMusic method to play sound files. You'll want to have some audio files, such as C.wave, D.wave, etc., saved in your project directory. Let's modify the method now. In this updated playMusic method, we try to load and play an audio clip based on the note entered by the user. If there's an error, we print an error message. Be sure to change the sound file names to match the notes you want to play. Now, let's add some validation for the user's input. We only want to accept certain notes like C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. Anything else should result in an error message. We added a call to a new method isValidNote. Now, let's create this method to check if the note inputted by the user is one of the accepted notes. With this validation in place, our game of music creation is becoming more robust. Now users can only play valid notes and receive appropriate feedback for invalid entries. Next, to make our application more interactive, let's implement a scoring system. Every time a user correctly plays a note, we'll increment a score. First, add a score variable to our class. Now, we need to update our score inside the playMusic method whenever a correct note is played. Here's how we can do that. With this implemented, we'll display the current score every time a user plays a valid note. This adds an additional layer of engagement to our game. Now let's make the game a little more challenging. We can introduce random note challenges. Each time the user plays a note, we can randomly select a note, and the user has to match that note to get points. Let's implement the method getRandomNote. This method will return a random note from the set of valid notes. With this setup, every time users play, they will be challenged to match a randomly selected note. Let's prompt the user to match the current note in the game loop. We also need to check if the user matches the current note correctly. Let's modify the section where we validate the input. Now every time the user plays a note that matches the current note, they get points and the note changes. This adds a fun challenge to our game. Let's also add a way to visually represent the score and the current note. For this, we can create a simple GUI using Swing. We will update our game loop method to display the current score and note on the GUI instead of the console. Initialize the GUI at the beginning of our game. To keep the GUI responsive, we will use a separate thread to manage the game logic, allowing for smooth gameplay. This will help handle user input while still updating the GUI. Now, let's wrap this up. To conclude our music creation game, we will create a button to restart the game when it's over. In our Restart Action Listener, we will simply set the score back to 0 and start a new game loop. And that's it. We've built a fully functional music creation game in Java, complete with sound, score, and a GUI interface. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give a thumbs up and subscribe for more programming tutorials.